Welcome to Dream Tales Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle theta wave melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Soon the music will shift into soothing alpha wave tones, carrying you toward a calm shoreline of dreams. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. Mirror, Mirror on the Wall begins now, and when the story's final line has faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. Mirror, mirror on the wall. I am the mirror that hangs on the wall in the Queen's chamber. For many years, I have watched and listened to everything that happens in this castle. People think I am just a piece of glass in a golden frame, but I am much more than that. I have feelings, thoughts, and memories. Today, I want to tell you the true story of Snow White, as I have seen it with my own eyes. Long ago, before I became a magic mirror, I was created by a powerful wizard who lived in the mountains. He made me to always tell the truth, no matter how difficult it might be. The wizard told me that truth was the most important thing in the world, even when it hurt people's feelings. He gave me the power to see into people's hearts and souls, not just their faces. When the wizard died, his belongings were sold to different people. A merchant bought me and took me to the kingdom where I now live. The king at that time was looking for a special gift for his new wife, who had just become queen after his first wife died. The merchant showed me to the king, and the king was amazed when I spoke to him. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? The king asked, testing my magic. I looked at him and answered honestly, You, my king, have a kind heart and a noble soul. Your inner beauty makes you the fairest in this land. The king was pleased and bought me immediately. He gave me to his new queen as a wedding present. At first, the queen was delighted with me. She was indeed very beautiful, with golden hair and bright blue eyes. When she asked who was the fairest, I always told her the truth, that she was the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. But I could see something else in the queen's heart. She was afraid of growing old, afraid of losing her beauty, afraid that people would stop loving her. I wished I could tell her that true beauty comes from kindness and love, but she never asked me about that. She only wanted to know about her physical appearance. Years passed, and the queen had a daughter with the king. The baby was born with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as night. The queen named her Snow White. I watched as Snow White grew from a tiny baby into a beautiful little girl. The queen loved Snow White very much at first. She would bring her to my chamber and show her off to me. "Look at my beautiful daughter," she would say proudly. "She will grow up to be even more beautiful than I am." But as Snow White grew older and more beautiful, I began to see the queen change. The fear in her heart grew stronger. She started asking me the same question every day, sometimes several times a day. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" For many years, I could honestly answer, "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But I could see what was coming. Snow White was growing more beautiful each day, not just in her appearance, but in her heart. She was kind to everyone, the servants, the animals, even the spiders in the corners of the castle. She had a laugh that sounded like silver bells and a smile that could make flowers bloom. The day I had been dreading finally came. Snow White had just turned 16. She had become not just physically beautiful, but radiant with inner goodness. When the queen asked her daily question, I had to tell the truth. "You are fair, my queen, it's true, but Snow White is 1,000 times more beautiful than you." The queen's face went white with rage. She screamed and threw things at me, but I could not break. Magic protected me. I felt terrible for causing her pain, but I could not lie. It was not in my nature. "How dare you?" the queen shouted. "I am the queen. I am the most beautiful." I tried to explain. "My queen, beauty is not just about how someone looks. Snow White has beauty in her heart that shines through her face. She is kind and good, but the queen would not listen." From that day forward, her heart filled with jealousy and hatred. I watched sadly as she planned terrible things. She called for a huntsman and ordered him to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. I wanted to warn Snow White, but I could only speak when someone asked me a direct question. The huntsman was a good man with a kind heart. I was relieved when he returned, without harming Snow White. He told the queen that he had done as she asked, but I could see in his eyes that he was lying. He had let Snow White escape into the forest. The queen was satisfied for a while, but then she came to me again. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" I had to tell the truth. "You are fair, my queen, but Snow White, who lives beyond the 7 hills with the 7 dwarfs, is still 1,000 times more beautiful than you." The queen realized that Snow White was still alive, and her anger grew even worse. I watched helplessly as she disguised herself as an old woman and went into the forest 3 times to try to kill Snow White. Each time, I hoped that someone would stop her, but I could only watch and wait. During this time, I learned to see Snow White through my magic. She had found a little cottage in the forest where 7 dwarfs lived. These were not ordinary dwarfs. They were miners who worked in the mountains, searching for precious gems. They were good, honest men who welcomed Snow White into their home. I watched Snow White clean their cottage and cook for them. I saw how she made friends with the forest animals and how she sang while she worked. Even in the dangerous forest, far from the castle, she remained kind and cheerful. Her beauty grew stronger each day because it came from her good heart. The first time the queen visited Snow White in disguise, she nearly killed her with a tight bodice. The dwarfs came home just in time to save her. The second time, she used a poisoned comb that made Snow White fall unconscious. Again, the dwarfs saved her, but I knew the queen would not give up. The third time, the queen came with a poisoned apple. I watched through my magic as she offered it to Snow White. Just one bite, the disguised queen said sweetly, "It's the most delicious apple in the world." Snow White, who always saw the good in people, took a bite. She fell to the ground as if dead. I felt my heart break. Yes, even mirrors can have hearts break. As I watched the dwarfs find her body, they could not wake her up. The dwarfs loved Snow White so much that they could not bear to bury her. Instead, they made a beautiful glass coffin and placed it on a hilltop where they could visit her every day. Even in the glass coffin, Snow White looked peaceful and beautiful. When the queen returned to the castle, she came to me again with her eternal question. This time, I could finally answer. "You, my queen, are the fairest of them all." But the queen's victory felt hollow. I could see that winning had not made her happy. She had destroyed the thing she feared most, being less beautiful than Snow White. But she had also destroyed her own capacity for love and joy. She looked older now, and there were lines of bitterness around her eyes and mouth. Months passed. I continued to tell the queen that she was the fairest, but I watched sadly as she became more and more lonely. The king had grown distant from her after Snow White's disappearance. The servants feared her. She had no friends, no one to love her. Beauty without love is like a flower without water. It withers and dies. Then one day, a prince was riding through the forest. He saw Snow White in her glass coffin and was struck by her beauty and the peaceful look on her face. The dwarfs told him her story, and the prince felt deep love for this girl he had never met, but whose goodness he could see even in death. "Please," he begged the dwarfs, "let me take her to my castle. I will care for her always." The dwarfs, seeing the pure love in the prince's heart, agreed. As the prince's servants lifted the coffin, they stumbled slightly. The piece of poisoned apple that had been stuck in Snow White's throat came loose, and she coughed it up. Snow White opened her eyes and sat up, alive and more beautiful than ever. The prince told her how he had fallen in love with her goodness and beauty, and Snow White, seeing his kind heart, agreed to marry him. I felt such joy watching this scene through my magic. True love had conquered death itself. The prince and Snow White were married in a beautiful ceremony, and they invited everyone in the kingdom, everyone except the wicked queen. When the queen heard about the wedding, she came to me one last time. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" I looked at her with sadness and had to tell the truth. "You are fair, my queen, but the new princess, who was once Snow White, is 1,000 times more beautiful than you." The queen's face twisted with rage and jealousy. She could not bear the thought that Snow White was alive and happy. In her fury, she grabbed a heavy candlestick and smashed it against my surface. I felt pain as cracks spread across my face, but I did not break completely. As she struck me again and again, I saw her reflection multiplied in my broken pieces. Dozens of angry, bitter faces staring back at her. The sight was so horrible that the queen stepped backward in shock. She tripped over her own feet and fell out of the window. That was the end of the wicked queen. But my story does not end there. Though cracked and broken, I remained in the castle. Snow White and her prince came to live there after their wedding, and they found me hanging on the wall. "Poor mirror," Snow White said gently, touching my broken surface. "You always told the truth, didn't you? Even when it was hard to hear." The prince wanted to throw me away, but Snow White insisted on keeping me. "He was just doing what he was made to do," she said. "It wasn't his fault that my stepmother couldn't handle the truth." Snow White had a new mirror brought for her daily use, but she kept me in a special place in her library. Sometimes she would come to talk to me, not to ask about beauty, but to ask about wisdom and truth. "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she would say, "what is the most important thing of all?" And I would answer, "Love, my princess. Love is the most important thing of all. Love for others, love for yourself, and love for the truth." Snow White understood what I meant. She ruled the kingdom with kindness and wisdom. She took care of the poor and sick. She made laws that were fair to everyone. She and her prince had many children, and she taught them all the same lesson I had learned to value: that true beauty comes from a good heart. Years later, when Snow White was an old woman with gray hair and wrinkled skin, she came to visit me one last time. "Mirror, mirror on the wall," she said with a smile, "who is the fairest of them all?" I looked at her aged face, which still glowed with kindness and love, and I answered honestly, "You, my dear Snow White, are still the fairest of them all. For beauty that comes from a good heart never fades." She smiled and patted my broken frame gently. "Thank you, old friend, for always telling the truth." That was the last conversation I ever had. Soon after, Snow White passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, who all loved her dearly. Now, I hang in this castle, silent and cracked, but still watching. New people live here now, and sometimes children come to look at me and wonder about the old stories. I cannot speak to them anymore. My magic faded when Snow White died. But if I could, I would tell them this: beauty is not about having a perfect face or the finest clothes. Beauty is about having a kind heart, being honest and true, and caring for others more than yourself. The queen was beautiful on the outside, but her jealousy made her ugly on the inside. Snow White was beautiful both inside and out, And that is why she is remembered with love, while the queen is remembered with fear. I learned that telling the truth is important, but how we tell the truth matters too. I wish I had been able to help the queen understand what real beauty was, instead of just answering her questions about appearances. Maybe if I had been wiser, things could have been different. But I do not regret always telling the truth. Truth may hurt sometimes, but lies hurt more in the end. The queen's jealousy grew because she could not accept the truth about herself and Snow White. If she had been able to see that there was room in the world for more than one beautiful person, if she had been able to love Snow White instead of seeing her as competition, everyone could have been happy. So remember, when you look in any mirror, do not just see your reflection. See your heart. See your kindness. See your capacity for love. These are the things that make you truly beautiful. And these are the things that last forever. And if someone asks you, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" you can answer with confidence. Anyone who loves truly and lives kindly is the fairest of them all. That is the real secret I learned in all my years hanging on the wall. That is the truth that matters most.